If everyone had a podcast, this show would be so much better.
Gorgeous, baby. You're gorgeous.
This is the Josh Podcast Show, the anti-podcast podcast on God and man. The show that everybody's talking about. The show that will become a necessary part of your weekly mental diet. The show that picks up where JoshRolfe.com leaves off. The show title that uses the word podcast 4 times. Introducing your host, Josh Rolfe.
It's been a whole month since I last podcasted. The last time I had just had braces installed. These aren't just regular braces, these are adult braces. I love saying adult braces. I love talking about my braces. I talk about my braces constantly. People forget that I have them because they can't see them. They can't see it. My lower lip covers my teeth on the bottom. When I talk, sometimes, especially when my tongue is all gnarly, when the wire in the back kind of juts out and tears up my tongue, not to be graphic here. Did I talk last time about how I hoped I'd have a bionic tongue? That's kind of my hope here. And straight teeth. Straight teeth and a bionic. I will have a mouth that will be able to finally pronounce my name. My name, if you can't tell, if you look at my name, Josh Rolfe, I have to break between my first and last name because it's so consonant heavy. It's so heavy. There's not a lot of vowels. You don't really get a break. And when you say the consonants, the j and the sh, the o kind of breaks it up very briefly, but it's j, ah, sh. That's a lot for a name. And then you have the break, which I add an extra few milliseconds in there than most people. If your name is Ann Smith, you just say Ann Smith. If your name is Roger's kind of heavy, has the heavy j in the middle, but j is easier than sh. Roger, if it was Rosher, and then the last name, you'd have to break Rosherberg. Rogerberg. Rogerberg would be easier to say. Josh Rolfe, I have to put an extra break in between the first and last. When I pick up my phone, or when people are asking me on the phone, I have to say Josh, pause, Rolfe. Rolfe is a heavy. There's a lot going on there. It's interesting. The Josh and the Rolfe both have the O. So it's the ah. So it almost would rhyme if we were in a place where the consonant or the vowel rhymed over the last syllable, which is kind of what our rhyming system is based on. But Josh Rolfe. But that's a lot. The R, Ulf. That's a 3-letter explosion. And when I say my name fills up my mouth. And so I'll need this extra space that the braces will provide, along with the bionic tongue, because you got to have a tongue to say R, R. You've got to have a strong tongue to say ulf. You got to have a strong tongue to say j and sh. To say ah, you don't really need a tongue. If my name was I would not need a tongue. I'm glad I have one because it's made life a lot easier for me. I can taste things. I have a family member that can't taste. He had an accident, and so it knocked out that little nerve that connects his taste buds to his brain. And so we can't taste anymore. We can taste. I mean, we're very privileged. It's been a very interesting month. I actually recorded 2 podcasts. I've deleted them, so there's no hope of bringing them back because they're gone. They were about the election. I had a lot to say about the election, and it was probably better. It's like writing a nastygram email to someone. Sometimes it's healthy to type it out and then delete. Sit on it for a little while, chew on it. The problem with the 2 I recorded is I recorded them very late at night, which is usually when I do this. And it's getting late now. I was 2 hours ago, I could have fallen asleep. But this is what I do. I love to torture myself, keep myself up. Does my voice sound any better than the last one? Because it's been a whole month. And I have had some more tongue destruction in the last week. Just as I thought I was getting used to it, that it was getting a little easier to eat, to talk, to say my S's. If you can tell my S's, I can say my S's again. But sometimes I've noticed that when I am maybe tired, or when my tongue's a little gnarly from rubbing up against these braces, these brackets constantly, my gosh, this is crazy. Having braces in your mouth is the equivalent of carrying a baby. Except for braces, you have to carry them twice as long. You have metal stuck to your mouth. It's almost bringing on claustrophobic feelings. I feel like I'm trapped sometimes. And you know how, people go crazy? I have this book about people that have this, there's a name for it. Forget what it is. It's like a mental illness or disorder where they have a limb of their body and they feel like it's not theirs. And there are third world doctors who will amputate for this cause, for this someone, and they always feel better, even though they're totally inconvenienced now that they're missing a leg, and yet their brain connection to that body part was not there. Braces are an invasion of your mouth. And your mouth is a very sensitive, intimate part of your body. You want your mouth to eat. You got to eat and speak. When you have braces, there's just this like invasion of metal. Imagine having metal stuck to any part of your body. Like piercings, that's voluntary. No one has an involuntary body piercing of metal to their body. But I have predicted that the future of piercing will someday have you ever seen the ancient Egyptian drawings? What are they wearing? When you look at their chest or their heads, they have metal. There's a lot of metal, gold, it looks like. And who knows? It could have been cloth, but it looks metallic. It looks like they have. I predict with piercings and tattoos that we're constantly pushing the boundaries. Eventually, people will be embedding plates of metal in their body. And so you're going to have someone who, the person who would have they make fun of the guy who has a metal forehead You couldn't see it because it was covered with skin, but they had like a plate. This will be an exposed plate. And people have a lot of fun with magnets around people like this. But maybe they'll demagnetize the plates. Maybe they'll do that at the plate parlor. And that would be some interesting times to see people. Like when I first saw gauge earrings, the big black hoops in the ears, in the earlobe. When I first saw that, I was like, wow, this is going very Africa. This is going very like Aboriginal, like, the people who would make their ears bigger or their nose bigger or their lip bigger or change the form of their heads. They like press their heads in to manipulate their body. I see that going in the direction of plates. Braces are also voluntary, but you can't get rid of them. You can't rip them off. You can't take them out. And that's where I'm talking about the people that go crazy with wanting to remove a limb. What if I, got to this point where I just started trying to rip out my braces? I know that might make you cringe thinking of that. I'm not going to do that. I'm okay. I'm not going to have a mental breakdown over my braces. But there is a sense of, there's like that, I'm on the cusp of, I can see how someone could be led to a manic episode because of this metal stuck to my mouth. The topic today is, what if everyone had a podcast? Everyone pretty much does. I know like 2 people who have a podcast. And I guess if everyone had a podcast, it would depend on what the podcast is. And a lot of people can compare this to a blog. It's an audio blog. There aren't a lot of people who have a podcast who are just like talking about their life that I know of. It's usually like a show. They're trying to entertain in some way, where a blog isn't really supposed to entertain. It's just like, here's my life. You write your blog based on what's happening in your life, what you're thinking about. A radio show is a little different. Podcast. So what if you had a podcast? Assuming you do not have I am sorry if you do have a podcast already. What if everyone you knew had a podcast? That's it. I didn't really have anything more to say than that. Although you could extrapolate this down to the blog. What if everyone had a blog? Well, not many people have a blog, especially these days. That was really cool 8 or 9 years ago. Sort of fallen away. Now it's Facebook. What if everyone had a Facebook account? And pretty much most people do, but I do know some that do not have one. And it gets a little irritating when you need a way to contact them and you no longer have their email or their cell phone or their home phone or their address, and they're not on Facebook. They're pretty much invisible to the world. Here's what would be cool. If everyone had a Twitter account, life would get so much better for me. Because there's a lot of people on Twitter that I don't know that I follow, but I think it's more interesting and fun when there's people I know. And that group in my life seems so small. There's maybe 30 or 40 people that I know well who are on Twitter. And every now and then I'll see their post. Sometimes I'll like it. Sometimes I'll retweet. Sometimes I'll comment. But if I were to just do that to the, there's like the 30 I know, and then like 10 of them are active. If I were to just write to them and respond to every tweet that they wrote, that's all I would be doing. And the interesting thing about Twitter is, it's completely boring there when you don't know a lot of people who have a Twitter account. Facebook conversations, there's a lot going on. And, but so if you imagined a Facebook conversation where you know that anyone can search and find it until forever from now, that's Twitter. Twitter, there's a lot of pressure to get it right. When you tweet, future employers, future family, future generations, future friends, future randoms who maybe talk to you on the phone and like do a Google search could find you and see everything you've ever tweeted. Now you can do that on my Facebook page. I've made it public. I don't care. My life is an open book. You want to see what I've done on Facebook or Twitter? It's all there for anyone to see and analyze and think about or not think about. There needs to be more people on Twitter. There needs to be more people podcasting. And I think I have helped inspire a few bloggers. I've seen their blogs come and then they've gone. Podcast, I don't know if I've inspired anyone to podcast. I hope I make this look easy. I hope I make this look fun. It doesn't really matter. But I just had that thought today that I thought was kind of a funny thought. What if everyone had a podcast? I didn't think through it too well. So that's why I don't really have a whole lot to say. But I am glad I talked about braces. I'm glad I mentioned the plates as a fashion item in the future. I had a blog post that I've worked on for a while on helmets. You know the beanie helmets that bikers wear? I've done a blog post on pants, but this one on helmets I never published because it just wasn't quite there. I wanted to find a group of bikers and wear their helmet and then like headbutt them. And I wanted picture or video of that and put that on the blog. That's what held me back from doing that. So that's all I have today. This is another unplanned episode. Just not really a whole lot to talk about, but I'm almost at 20 minutes. I might try to drag this out to 20. I know this is a pet peeve of a lot of people who listen to podcasts and get frustrated because they think that it should just be tight, that's what we're accustomed to, everything being so packaged and beautiful and perfect. None of this messiness, none of this impromptu, just talking extemporaneously. I was thinking about the Lincoln Douglas debates. We've got the election going on. Finished. Excuse me. I sniffed and I said, excuse me. Wasn't appropriate. The Lincoln Douglas, these guys would speak without a planned speech for hours and people would listen. I podcast for 25 minutes and people complain, telling me that I spoke for too long or they turned it off halfway through. I know I'm not Abraham Lincoln, okay? I know I cannot keep attention for so long. I know this because I ask for reviews at the end of the show. And, I did just get a new review recently, actually. I'll read that one. I finally got one. It's been like a year since I'd had a review. Got the sniffles all of a sudden. Let's see here. Why won't it show ratings? Man, I've got a lot of podcast episodes. 60, this will be 62. Customer reviews, they're called. I think I'm going to have to find it on my phone here. Hey, I'm past 20 minutes. Oh, goodness. Let's see. Search for my podcast. There it is. Okay. Reviews. Here's the last podcast review. It was so nice. Here's the subject line. Thoughtful, insightful, hilarious. 5 stars. And then wrote, love listening, keep it up. The most articulate orthodontia voice I've ever heard. Seriously. Wow. That was a super nice review. If you haven't reviewed the podcast, I have a burp coming and it won't come out. If you have not reviewed the podcast, please do so. It makes my day. It would make my Christmas season. If I just had like a few more reviews this month, that'd be cool. People are listening. Do you know what people are listening to today? Because my listening downloads were going up really high when I was consistently doing it once a week. When I stop doing once a week, they plummet. My stats plummet. Where was I going with this? My stats plummet when I don't do it once a week. I'm going to try to do it again. I was talking about reviews and then the stats. What was it? Where was I going with that? Anyway, I hope you all have a great time. And I'll just cue the music here. And I'll be back next week. I'm not really sure what I'm going to talk about. This is probably the most casual I've been on an episode. I might have another one like this next week. I might not. But if you could review, maybe that's where I was going. If you could review the podcast in iTunes, that would be huge. That would be such a nice treat. The fact that today, my podcast was listened to a number of times. It was episode 9, Ugly Christmas Sweaters and the Fall of the Roman Empire. I think it's December 1st today, and people are searching ugly Christmas sweaters, and they found my podcast. How cool is that? So for anyone who listened to that and now somehow it found this episode, thank you for listening. I'm glad you found it. And I hope you have an amazing day, night, whatever time of day it is for you. Thank you. I'm going to be doing a motivational. I've got some plans. I'm going to be doing a motivational rant, motivational quotes come January 1st. So if you follow me on Instagram at Josh Rolfe, stay tuned because I will have a daily motivational Josh podcast show, the anti-podcast on God and Man quote of the day. So look out for that. You can follow on Instagram. You don't have to follow it. You don't have to do anything, as I've said before on the show. But if you do anything, if you do choose to do anything, rank the podcast with 5 stars. It helps when people search for the show, and there's going to be some good stuff coming. So for those who've stuck with it, thank you. Have a great time. I like saying have a great time. And God bless you.
Thank you for listening to the Josh Podcast Show, the anti-podcast podcast on God and man. For more information, visit joshpodcast.com. Follow Josh on Twitter at Josh Rolfe. That's Rolfe, R-O-L-P as in podcast, H. Now go and have the best day and night ever. And have fun.